had just gotten off work, and it was about 11 p.m. I was heading home when my car started to sputter and then die in the middle of the road. I tried turning it back over, but it wouldn't start. I looked around me and I saw that I was right in front of a gas station. I walked into the store and asked if they had anyone who could come jump me. The cashier didn't say anything. He just stared at me for what felt like an eternity, and then he finally replied, "No, sorry, I can't help you." As I turned to walk out of the store, I noticed that all of the other customers in the store were staring at me as well and whispering amongst themselves. Confused, I got back in my car and called a tow truck. But as I waited, I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched. Welcome back to another episode where we will be bringing you the most terrifying true gas station horror stories from Reddit. So turn your lights off, lock your doors, and get ready because this is going to be one hell of a ride. Our next Reddit post is from a user. This happened when I was traveling through New Mexico. It was late at night and I stopped at a lone gas station off the highway. As I pulled up to the pump, I noticed that there were no other customers around. Good, I thought. I can get some peace and quiet and use the bathroom without having to wait in line. While pumping my gas, however, I heard a commotion inside the store. At first it sounded like a woman screaming, and then a man's voice yelling, "Shut up, bitch." I should have left, but instead I stood there frozen. The door opened and a huge biker type came out and walked towards me. I panicked and quickly finished paying and ran to my car. I fumbled with my keys and tried to unlock the passenger side door, but it was no use. In my panic, I realized that I had locked my keys in the car. I pounded on the glass and yelled for help, but the guy just kept walking toward me. When he was close enough for me to see his face, I could tell that he was drunk. He reeked of stale waste and alcohol. He stopped beside my car and said, "You okay, little lady?" His tone was slurred and slow. Before I could respond, his eyes widened and he exclaimed, "Holy F. You scared the piss out of me." He stumbled away from me and went back inside the store. I quickly unlocked my driver's side door and sped off. Still shaken, I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see him chase after me. To this day, I still wonder if I made the right call by running. What do you think I should have done? Our next Reddit post is from another user. This happened about 15 years ago in Florida. I had driven down to Key West for the weekend with a friend, and we were driving back up towards Miami on Sunday evening. We decided to stop for gas on a little stretch of overseas highway known as the 7-Mile Bridge. There are a few small islands along this stretch of highway, and one of them has a gas station and a small convenience store. We pull into the gas station and decide to walk into the store to kill a few minutes while we fill up. We go inside and it's pretty clear we are the only customers in the store. As we make our way to the counter, we notice a pile of cash on the counter. It's not a lot of money, maybe $200. But it's sitting there with nobody behind the counter. One of the stranger things about the store is that everything is closed except the front door and the glass doors leading out to the pumps. All the other interior doors are boarded up from the inside. As we're debating whether to grab the cash or not, the power goes out. We run out of the store and back to our car. As we drive off, we can hear the sound of shattering glass coming from inside the store. I never did find out what happened to that store. Our next Reddit post is from another user. I was working security at a gas station and convenience store in Arizona. My shift was mostly uneventful, just your typical stuff. Loud and rude customers, people trying to steal alcohol and cigarettes. Then one night this couple comes in. They were both pretty messed up, and they asked me where they could buy more alcohol. I informed them that we weren't selling any more alcohol and that they needed to leave. They got pissed and started cursing at me, calling me names and saying that they were gone. Nah, come back later and get all of their alcohol then. I just ignored them and figured that they would eventually leave. After a few minutes, the woman came up to the counter and asked me if we had condoms. I told her that we didn't carry those, but she insisted that I check in the back room for her. I told her no, but she kept insisting, so I got annoyed and told her to get her things and get out. She ended up storming off, and the man went to follow her, but then stopped and asked me if I could change his $100. I told him that I could undo that either, and he went to leave. But then he asked me if I wanted to buy a dime bag. I told him no and that he needed to leave. He argued with me for a bit, but eventually left without his bag. A few hours later, the man comes back in alone and asks me for more money. I tell him that I can't help him and that he needs to leave. He gets pissed again and starts telling me how I am the worst security guard ever and that he is going to write a bad review about me online. And then he leaves. That was the last that I saw of him. Well, about 2 weeks later, I'm working the same shift and the same couple comes in. They look much better now and they're both smiling. The woman says to me, "Sorry about the other night. I was really drunk, and my boyfriend can get pretty scary when I am. Thank you for not calling the cops on him." I told her no problem and that it happens all the time. She paid for her items and left. I never saw them again. And that's gonna conclude this episode's stories. But before we wrap things up, I want to send a huge thank you to a supporter for their contribution. Their support is greatly appreciated and helps us continue producing these videos for you guys. If you want to see more videos like these, then be sure to hit that subscribe button because we put out new content regularly. Also, if you have a story you'd like to share, then please send it to the email below. We always love hearing from you guys and featuring your stories. Finally, if you want to join our community, then check out our social media. We'd love to have you. Thanks for watching. What do you do when you see a van parked at a gas station that has no license plates and a strange symbol spray painted on the side? Do you take a picture and post it online? B, stay away from it. Or C, investigate it? Well, one man chose C, and he ended up being chased through a parking lot by a crazed killer. This is my channel, and today we're going to tell a chilling, true gas station horror story about a man who was stalked and nearly killed after taking a picture of an unmarked van. It was 2016 when a man made the mistake of taking a picture of this very van. It was spotted in a gas station in Port Orchard, Washington. At first glance, it appears to be an ordinary white van, except for the fact that it didn't have any license plates. The man was curious, so he took a couple of photos and posted them on Reddit asking if anyone knew what the symbol spray painted on the side meant. The symbol looked like a circle with two lines intersecting it, and the Reddit user who posted the photo added, "I don't know what this means, but there are 3 of these symbols, one on each side of the van." He said the gas station was pretty busy, and that he was unsure if he should report it. Within hours, his post went viral with thousands of upvotes and hundreds of comments speculating about the meaning of the logo and whether the van should be reported. One Reddit user commented, "That looks like the logo for a local band. I'm not from Washington, but I've seen that logo before." Another said, "Looks like the emblem of a certain cult that worships an ancient deity of death and destruction." Of course, all these comments were jokes, but it's safe to say that after reading them, the man who spotted the van became a little uneasy. But then again, even without the comments, he probably would have felt uneasy. After all, just imagine seeing a random white van at a gas station with no license plates and a strange symbol painted on the side. The man continued to get creeped out every time he thought about it, wondering who owned the car and why they had covered the license plate. Was it stolen? Did it belong to a fugitive or someone involved in shady activities? What was that symbol? Was it gang-related? Was there some kind of serial killer hiding inside? One theory posited that the van was used for smuggling illegal substances, while another said that it might belong to a human trafficker. One comment that really stood out said, "It could be a missing persons van." You know, when cops take people in for questioning and you're unsure if they're a victim or a suspect, they drive them around in an unmarked van. These comments got the man thinking, and although it was just a baseless theory, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He decided he needed answers, so the next day he went back to the gas station where he'd seen the van and waited, but it never came back. For weeks, the mystery of the van continued to eat away at him. He tried to focus on his work, but he kept getting distracted by thoughts of the van. His friends and family started to notice that something was wrong. They asked what was bothering him, but he couldn't explain it. All he knew was that he needed to find out more about that van. Then one night, while he was browsing Reddit, he saw a new post that made his blood run cold. The image attached to the post was the same photo he had posted, but this time, the license plate was visible. He quickly clicked on the image, hoping that it would give him some answers, but instead he found himself frozen in fear. The license plate read, by which stands for Bureau of Indian Affairs. In other words, the van belonged to the government. He remembered how the comments on his original post speculated about the van being used for smuggling and trafficking. What if those theories were actually true? What if the people inside the van were involved in something dangerous? The man was horrified to realize that he had unwittingly trespassed on a government investigation. He hoped that whoever was in the van hadn't seen him. He wondered if they knew that he'd taken a picture of it. Had they been watching him? Over the next few days, the man couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in bed, his mind racing with all sorts of scary scenarios. He checked his windows and doors every night, convinced that the people from the van were outside his house. He started to feel like he was being watched. Then one morning he woke up to the sound of pounding on his door. He jumped out of bed and hid under the covers, his heart pounding in his chest. Who could it be? Was it them? As the knocking continued, he slowly got closer to the door to try to listen. Whoever it was shouting for him to come out. But when he opened the door, he saw that there was no one there. He stepped outside to look around, but he didn't see anyone. Had he imagined it? Was it just stress getting to him? Or were the people in the van really after him? At that moment, he wished he'd never taken that picture. Now he was worried that he'd put himself in danger. Was it too late to escape? Maybe he should leave town and start over somewhere else. But then he thought, no, I haven't done anything wrong. Why should I let some random people ruin my life? I'll show them that I'm not afraid. The man went back inside and locked the door. But then he heard a noise outside. He went to the window and gasped. There was the white van parked in front of his house. His blood ran cold. Were they really here for him? Did they know that he'd taken their picture? He wanted to hide, but where could he go? He was trapped. He watched as a man got out of the van and started walking toward his house. The man was tall and muscular with a shaved head and a goatee. He was wearing a black t-shirt and jeans and had a tattoo of a snake on his right arm. As he got closer, the man saw a camera on the porch and smashed it. The man screamed and ran inside to hide. He heard the front door open and close and footsteps coming toward him. He hid under the bed, his heart pounding in his chest. He heard the voice say, come out, wherever you are." The man shook with fear as the voice got closer and closer. He closed his eyes tight, waiting for the worst, but it never came. After what seemed like an eternity, the footsteps faded away and the man slowly emerged from under the bed. He cautiously approached the door and peeked outside. The coast was clear. He ran to the window and saw the white van speeding away. Shaken but unharmed, the man decided to leave town. He packed a bag and drove away, never looking back. To this day, he doesn't know who those people were or what they wanted. But he was grateful that he escaped unharmed. This story goes to show that sometimes it's best to just mind your own business. If he'd never taken a picture of that van, he never would have gotten involved in whatever those people were up to. But because of his curiosity, he put himself in grave danger. So the next time you see a stranger parked in a gas station, be careful. You never know who or what you're dealing with. Sometimes it's best to just leave well enough alone. We hope you enjoyed this terrifying tale. If you did, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching. They say some people are so devoted to their job, they'll never clock out. Imagine pulling into a gas station late at night for one last fill-up before your road trip ends and you finally get to go home. But when you step out of your car, you notice something is wrong. There aren't any other customers around. And where is the cashier? This story comes from a Reddit user. I got gas at 2 a.m. and noticed that the attendant wasn't moving. I was tired from driving and didn't pay much attention to him when I pulled into the station. I just parked and started pumping gas. While I thought about how happy I would be once I got to my hotel room, I was 3/4 of the way through pumping gas when I heard what I thought was a cough. It was a dry, hacking sound that seemed to come from the little hut where the attendants sit. At first I thought maybe it was just an animal or something, but then I heard shuffling sounds followed by the dry cough again. I stopped pumping gas and decided to see if everything was alright. Just in case it was a person in distress or something. I walked over to the hut and peeked inside. That's when I saw him. He was sitting there slumped over the counter with his head resting on his arm. I couldn't see his face because he had this huge black hat pulled low over his eyes. He also had this big black coat on that reached down past his hands. All I could see of his face was his mouth. It was hanging open slightly, like he was asleep. But there were these wet saliva drops coming out of his mouth and falling onto the counter. It looked kind of gross. I don't want to admit how much it creeped me out. At this point, I'm standing there thinking, what do I do? Do I wake him up? How do I wake him up? Maybe he has a weapon on him. Should I call the police? My mind was racing trying to figure out what to do. Then he started coughing again, and that's when I realized he wasn't just sleeping. It looked like he was choking. I could see his whole body convulsing as he tried to catch his breath. He stayed like that for a few seconds, then he slumped back over the counter, resting his head on his arm again. I remember thinking, oh my god, he just died right in front of me. What do I do? Then he started gasping for air again, and this time he let out this blood-curdling scream. The noise seemed to come from deep inside him. It sounded like an animal squealing as it's being killed. Honestly, it was absolutely terrifying. After he stopped screaming, he went back to just breathing heavily. I was standing there in shock, not knowing what to do. When I finally came to my senses, I quickly walked back to my car and got in. I started to think maybe I should just drive off. The attendant might have been fine. Maybe he just fell asleep on the job. Or maybe he had a medical issue or something. I don't know. I just didn't want to be there anymore. But after I started the car, I hesitated. I couldn't help but feel like something wasn't right. I mean, why was he wearing such a thick coat on such a hot night? Why did he have a hat pulled low over his eyes? And why was he sleeping on the job? I couldn't help but wonder if he was even a real person. What if he was some kind of sick pervert who wanted to attack me? Maybe he was hoping I would unsee him and then I'd walk into the store and he could jump me. Or maybe he was a drug addict who was high on something. And then he would have attacked me and taken my stuff. I just didn't know what to do. It felt like forever, but it was probably only a couple of minutes. When I finally worked up the courage to look back over at the gas station hut, I was shocked by what I saw. The door to the hut was wide open now and the man was nowhere to be seen. I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. I just wanted to get away from that. So I started to pull forward to leave, but that's when I noticed something else. There were no tire marks or anything. In fact, the ground around the hut was really clean. It was almost like nothing had ever been there. I don't know how else to describe it. It was like the place had been perfectly cleaned and made ready for use. This was all starting to freak me out. So I decided to just go. I put the car in drive and sped out of there. But as I was driving away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Like something wasn't supposed to be there. I've never had an experience like that before. Then a few days later, I saw a news report about a missing gas station attendant. His name was name removed, and he had last been seen at work. It turned out he had disappeared without a trace and nobody had seen him since. They never found him, and his family had to put up a reward to try to find out what happened to him. I'll never forget that night. To this day, I still can't stop thinking about what happened to that poor guy. I just hope wherever he is, he's okay. Okay, so before we go, I just want to say thank you for watching, and I want to ask you a favor. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. It really helps us out, and it allows us to bring you more content like this. Also, if you have a story you want to share with us, please send it to the email below. We would love to hear from you. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time. I was working the night shift at a gas station in my hometown when we had a pretty normal night. My coworker and I were just rolling cigarette after cigarette, and nothing really happened for hours. At around 3 AM, we got a customer. He pulled into the only bay and started pumping his gas. My coworker and I exchanged glances. It's not that he alarmed us, it's just that it broke the monotony of the night. We looked over and saw him finishing up and go inside. We continued rolling our cigarettes until we heard the front door open and close. I looked over and saw our customer come out of the store. He stepped outside and looked at his car. Then he started to walk towards the back of the building. I watched him for a moment, thinking he was going to the dumpster. It was then that I noticed he wasn't walking. He was shuffling like a zombie. He took a step and collapsed. My coworker and I froze, staring at the man as he slowly shuffled past the windows to the back door. The door opened. This is not possible. The back door has been propped open with a trash can since the day the manager hired me 3 months ago. No one could get in or out without us knowing. We watched as the man stumbled through the door and disappeared. I ran to the window and peered around the corner. I didn't see him anywhere. My coworker and I looked at each other. I shrugged and went back to rolling my cigarette. He came in less than a minute later. "Did you see what was behind there?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, but it sure sounded like someone coming down the stairs," he replied, referring to the basement access door. We both knew there was no way anyone could have gotten in or out without us seeing them. Still, we agreed we should check it out. As we walked toward the back of the building, I felt uneasy. For some reason, it felt wrong to be doing this, but I pushed the feeling aside and carried on. The back door was still open. "Weird," I said aloud. "Maybe someone from corporate finally decided to pay us a surprise visit," my coworker joked. I wasn't laughing. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I opened the door, which made a loud creaking sound, and stepped outside. We walked in silence toward the basement door. I slowly descended the steps, my eyes adjusting to the dim light. The concrete floor was wet and the air was heavy with the smell of mildew. We reached the bottom of the stairs and turned the corner into a narrow hallway. The walls were lined with old boxes and cleaning supplies. At the end of the hall was a metal door with a rusty padlock hanging from it. My coworker stopped dead in his tracks. "What's that thing?" he whispered, pointing to something in the distance. In the faint light, I could make out the shape of a person sitting on the floor with their back against the wall. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing in the small space. There was no response. I took a step closer. The figure didn't move. I took another step. The figure began to rise slowly. I froze, unsure what to do. The figure continued to rise until it was standing in front of me. I gasped. taking a step back. My eyes struggled to adjust to the darkness, but I could make out the features of the face. It was the customer who had shuffled in earlier, but now his eyes glowed an eerie red in the dim light. His skin was pale and his clothes were torn and dirty. He stared at me with an expressionless gaze. My coworkers screamed and ran in the opposite direction. I don't know how long I stood there frozen in fear, but it must have been minutes. The figure didn't move. It just stood there staring at me. Finally, I found my voice. "Hello," I stammered. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if considering my greeting. Then it spoke. Its voice was a raspy whisper. "Do you want to join me?" it asked. I took a step back. What do you mean?" The figure took a step forward. "Join me in the shadows," it whispered. "We can rule the world together." It reached out a hand toward me, its fingers long and sharp like claws. I screamed and stumbled backward, tripping over a box. I fell to the ground hard, scraping my hands and knees. The figure loomed over me, its eyes glowing bright enough. "Join me," it hissed. "Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you." I scrambled back, my heart pounding in my chest. "Get away from me," I cried. The figure lunged at me, knocking me over. I screamed again, thrashing wildly as I tried to get away. But it was no use, it was too strong. It pinned me to the ground, its weight pressing down on me. I could feel its hot, foul breath on my neck. "Join me," it whispered again, its voice closer than before. "Please, join me." I struggled against its grasp, but it was no use. It was too strong. It pressed its body against mine, and I could feel its coldness seeping into me. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. It covered my mouth with its hand, its fingers digging into my skin. I could feel its icy grip tightening around me, and I knew that it was going to be the last thing I ever felt. Just when I thought I would black out, it lifted its head and let out a loud roar. It sounded like nails on a chalkboard, like 1,000 screams in unison. The noise echoed through the basement, and I could feel the vibrations in my bones. Then, just as quickly as it started, it stopped. The figure let out a shaky breath, and I could hear the chains dragging on the concrete floor. Chains. It was wearing chains. It slowly released me from its grasp, and I scrambled away as fast as I could. I could hear its chains dragging behind it as it moved. I don't know where I was going. I was just running away from the sound. I rounded a corner and bumped into a wall. I slid down the wall, my back hitting the concrete floor. I sat there for a moment, trying to catch my breath. I could still hear the chains dragging in the distance. Then I started to cry. I cried for what felt like hours, but it was probably only minutes. When I finally stopped crying, I was exhausted. I don't remember how I got back upstairs, but I must have climbed out the basement window and somehow made my way back to the store. When I got back to the counter, my coworker wasn't there. I called out for him, but there was no answer. I walked outside to find him. He was gone. I called his name again, and this time he answered. I found him hiding in the bushes by the gas pumps. He was shaking and crying. I saw it," he stammered. "The thing. It came out of the basement, and it was looking for you. You have to believe me." I knew he was telling the truth. I had seen the creature myself. I tried to explain this to him, but he didn't believe me. He thought I was making it all up. We stayed in the bushes for a while, too scared to go near the building. Eventually, the sun started to come up and we decided we couldn't stay there any longer. We got out of the bushes and ran away from the gas station as fast as we could. Since that night, I haven't been back to the gas station. I don't want to see that creature again. I don't even want to think about it. But sometimes when I'm alone in the dark, I hear its chains dragging in my nightmares. And sometimes I swear I can hear it calling my name, begging me to join it in the shadows. I am about to tell you a terrifying true gas station horror story that happened to my friend S. brother-in-law when he was 17. I work at a gas station near Cleveland, Ohio. I love my job. My boss is amazing, and most of our customers are friendly. But every once in a while we get these customers that really test me. I've had people try to rob me, people pass out drunk inside the store, and even a fight break out over a pack of cigarettes. But nothing compares to the story I'm about to tell you now. It was about 11 p.m., and I was the only one working. The phone was ringing off the hook. The parking lot was empty except for a pickup truck and a van. Suddenly, the bell above the door jangled, and in walked this skinny guy. He was tall and pale and had dark circles under his eyes, like he had slept in days. His clothes were dirty, and his hair was greasy. He looked like he hadn't showered in a week. I didn't think much of it. We get all kinds of customers, and I've learned not to judge. This guy could be a millionaire for all I know. He slowly shuffled up to the counter and said in a raspy voice, "Do you have any lighters?" I looked at him for a second and replied, "Over there by the cash." He nodded his head and shuffled over to grab a lighter. As he was walking away, I noticed he wasn't paying. I quickly said, "Hey buddy, you need to go to the front and check out." He stopped, turned around and said, "No, I don't. I'll pay for it later." Then he started to walk away again. That's when I lost it. I yelled, "Hey, you didn't pay for that. It's $4.79. Do you have $4.79? He stopped, turned around and stared at me for a moment. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry, but I don't have any money. I just needed that lighter to buy some more batteries. I'm running out of gas and my car won't start without them." I felt bad for the guy, but I couldn't let him get away with stealing. So I said, "Look, why don't you just put your stuff back and I'll call the cops. I don't want to hurt you." He looked down at his feet and then back up at me. His eyes were red and watery, like he'd been crying. He mumbled something, but I couldn't hear what he said. He dropped the lighter and shoved his hands deep into his pockets. Then he slowly walked toward the door and disappeared into the night. I should mention here that my store is in a pretty bad part of town. I see fights break out every weekend, and there's always cops racing through the parking lot with their sirens blaring. When I don't see a customer for a bit, I usually just go back into the stockroom to organize some stuff. So I did just that. About 5 minutes later, the bell above the door jangled, and in walked the same skinny guy. He was still shuffling, but now he was holding a pack of batteries. He shuffled up to the counter and said, "Hi, do you have a lighter?" I responded, "We're out right now, but if you look in the parking lot, you might find one." He stared at me for a second, then shuffled out the door without saying a word. That's when I noticed a police car with its lights flashing pull up outside. I went to the front to see what was going on. One of the cops I knew walked up to me and asked, "Hey, did you just get a theft call?" I explained about the guy who stole the lighter, and how I didn't want to hurt him. So I didn't call the cops. The cop smiled and said, "Don't worry about it. We got him." He then asked if I saw which way he went. I pointed toward the woods behind my store, and the cop took off running in that direction. At this point, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I helped stop a thief and maybe even prevented a future murder. But this is where the story takes a turn for the worse. The next morning, I came into work and my boss told me that the manager from the store down the street was looking for me. I went to his store and he explained that the guy who stole the lighter from my store had tried to steal from his store too. I told him that the cops were after him, so the manager said thanks and went on his way. Now, this next part is the weirdest. Every day for the next week, I saw the same skinny guy walking around town. At first I thought it was the same guy, but I wasn't sure. I couldn't get a good look at his face, because he always wore a hoodie pulled tight across his forehead. But I could recognize that shuffling gait anywhere. Now, I wasn't worried or scared or anything. After all, he hadn't done anything to me personally, and the cops had almost caught him the first time. Plus, I figured if he tried anything funny, I could defend myself. I carry a can of bear spray in my bag just in case. One evening, about 2 weeks after the incident, I was closing up for the night. It was about 10 o'clock, and I was the only employee left in the store. I was counting the cash in the registers when suddenly the bell above the door jingled. In walked the same guy. He shuffled up to the counter and said, "Hi, I was wondering if you had any luck." I looked at him for a second and said, "Nope, we're all out." He nodded his head and shuffled away. I didn't think much of it. Maybe he was just being friendly, so I went back to counting the cash. A few minutes later, the bell jangled again and in he walked again. He shuffled up to the counter and said, "Hi." He nodded his head and shuffled away again. And that's when I realized something was wrong. He'd been standing in the exact same spot for the past 2 hours, and he had moved. I watched him shuffle up to the counter for a third time and say, "Hi, do you have a lighter?" I looked at him and said, "Nope, sorry, no lighters." He shuffled away again. I should mention here that my store gets pretty cold in the winter, and this guy was practically wearing shorts. I felt bad for him, but I also started to get a little annoyed. So I decided to confront him. I stood up and said, "Hey man, why don't you come out from behind the counter and talk to me like a normal person?" He shuffled around the counter and looked up at me. His eyes were blank and emotionless, and he had a creepy smile on his face. I got scared and backed away. He shuffled closer, and I could see that his teeth were long and sharp, like fangs. He reached out and grabbed my arm. I screamed and elbowed him as hard as I could in the nose. He stumbled back, holding his nose. I ran from the store and didn't stop running until I got home. When I got there, I called the cops and told them about the incident. They came out and searched the store, but they couldn't find the guy. My boss gave me the rest of the night off and I haven't been back since. I quit the next day. I hope whoever that guy was gets caught soon. He may not look like much, but I'm telling you, that guy is dangerous. That was a scary story about a gas station. If you like this type of content, please stay tuned for more. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.